This podcast is about chirality, chiral carbon, and asymmetric carbon. What is the meaning of this word chiral? Any molecule that is non-superimposable with its mirror image is said to be chiral. A chiral object is one that cannot be superimposed on its mirror image. This term, chiral, it originates from the Greek term meaning chiron, Greek term chiron meaning hand. As it is with human hands, the left hand cannot be superimposed on the right hand. It is the same with chiral molecules. They are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. So the best example of chiral object is our left hand and right hand. Now, what are achiral objects? On the other hand, objects which are easily superimposable on each other. For example, if you think of an spoon or an tennis racket or a bat or so, which can form a superimposable image on each other, is said to be achiral object. Chiral molecules and their mirror images, they are a kind of stereoisomers which are called as enantiomers. Already we have seen what is enantiomer in the previous podcast. Another test for chirality is to assess whether the object itself has got a plane of mirror plane of symmetry or a point of symmetry, that is a point of inversion. If it has a mirror plane of symmetry, then it is said to be achiral. Chirality occurs in many places in nature and it has also been copied by human beings. Example, all are architecture. In most of our architecture, the phenomenon of chirality occurs. Um, so, in general, when we spoke about the test for chirality, we said that if the object itself has got a mirror plane of symmetry, then it is said to be achiral. Therefore, objects with mirror plane or center of inversion, they are achiral, that is, they are not chiral. Whereas objects or molecules without a mirror plane, they are said to be asymmetric objects and they are achiral. So, asymmetric objects are non-superposable with their mirror images. In fact, they are different objects. In the case of molecules, chiral molecules and their mirror images, they are different molecules. Symmetric objects we can say are achiral and they are superposable with their mirror images and they are one and the same. Now let us see the term chiral or asymmetric carbon, chiral carbon or asymmetric carbon. A tetrahedral carbon which has four different substituents, a tetrahedral carbon bearing four different substituents is said to be a chiral carbon. And molecules with a single carbon bearing four different substitutes can exist as a pair of enantiomers which differ in the arrangement, that is the configuration of these substituents. And this carbon is otherwise called as stereogenic, or this carbon is otherwise called as a stereocentric carbon. Thus, chiral carbon atoms are also referred to as stereogenic carbons or asymmetrical carbon atoms. With regard to meso compounds or mesoforms, if they are symmetric or achiral molecules that contain stereocenters. Meso compounds, their mirror images, they are not stereoisomers because they are identical. Now let us summarize the difference between chiral and achiral molecules. Chiral means asymmetric in such a way that the structure and its mirror image are not superposable, whereas achiral means symmetric in such a way that it can be superposed on its mirror image. Chiral molecules are always asymmetric at one or more centers, whereas achiral molecules are always symmetric at every center. A particular molecule and its mirror image are two different compounds in the case of chiral molecules. Whereas in the case of achiral molecules, the molecule and its mirror image are the same. In the case of chiral molecules, the molecule and its mirror image are non-superimposable, whereas in the case of achiral molecules, the molecule and its mirror images are superimposable. In the case of chiral molecules, the molecules can rotate the plane polarized light clockwise or anticlockwise. Whereas in the case of achiral molecules, the molecules cannot rotate the plane polarized light in any direction. In short, chirality we can say is defined as the potential of a molecule to occur in two asymmetric forms that are non-superimposable mirror images of each other without changing the atomic composition, atom-atom connections, or bond orders. This phenomenon generally occurs due to a difference in the three-dimensional orientation of four different substituents attached to a single central atom, creating what can be considered as a left-hand and right-hand versions of the same molecules. And these two versions of the molecules are referred to as enantiomers. And what is the significance of this chirality? Now we have seen the definition for the terms chirality, chiral carbon, asymmetric carbon, etc. Now, what is the significance of this chirality? Chirality is a particularly important concept in biology because cells are mostly composed of chiral molecules. Small chiral molecules such as amino acids and sugars, they are the building blocks of larger molecules such as proteins and nucleic acids, which are also chiral. Chirality plays a fundamental role in the binding affinity and interactions between the drug and its target, thus shaping the drug's pharmacology. And it is for this reason that in 1992, the FDA outlined a series of guidelines for the pharmaceutical development of a single enantiomer and racemates. The drugs can interact in a chiral environment, and biological targets recognize their ligands in a three-dimensional fashion. It is logical that molecules with a high degree of 3D shape will interact with their targets with an increased affinity and higher levels of specificity, thus making more efficacious and safer drugs. Now, let us see about asymmetric carbon. Already we have seen that it is the most important feature that leads to chirality in organic compounds, or it is the presence of an asymmetric or chiral carbon, which leads to the chirality in organic compounds. Now, what is this asymmetric carbon? A carbon that is bonded to four different groups is said to be an asymmetric carbon. Already we have seen that the other word, it is otherwise called as a stereogenic center or a stereogenic carbon. And an asymmetric center has an sp3 carbon, four different groups attached. In general, if there are no asymmetric carbon atoms, usually the molecules are achiral. If it has one asymmetric carbon atom, it is always chiral. And if it is greater than or equal to two asymmetric carbon atoms, the molecule may or may not be chiral. So one best example of asymmetric carbon is, let us consider the structure of amino acids alanine. You can see that amino acid alanine, whether it is D form or L form, it has got a carbon atom with four groups, namely one amino group, carboxylic group, one hydrogen, and one methyl attached to it. So this carbon present in alanine is said to be an asymmetric carbon atom. So in this podcast, we have seen about what is chirality, what is chiral carbon and asymmetric carbon. Thanks for listening.